You know, we have to think of democracy at so many different levels. Democracy, we have to think about in terms of participation. A lot of times in this country, we think of democracy only in terms of elections, right? If you think of it more broadly as a participatory society where people have rights and what they think and say matters, and they have the ability to critique and have dissent, I would say we're becoming less democratic.
Except that there are people who are now part of the public debate who were once not at all. So I mean,
right.
It's complicated. Every time my brother, who's the eternal optimist about the world's getting better, always reminds me when I say something like this. So I'm not. So I usually say what you say, and then he says, "Well, but think when you were born, people of color and most women had almost no voice."
Absolutely.
So we went from zero.
That's right. And I think the internet creates new avenues for participation. So I think it is important not to be too. I think in terms of education, I think the point Juan Gonzalez made today is that in urban schools, this issue of mayoral control is having the effect of marginalizing and marginalizing communities
which are the only political. In other words, there's. In the absence of any other citywide political,
that's right.
And the unions are weaker. All the other kinds of organized cross-community avenues, I think, have diminished, and schools are, right there in the community. They are. I used to debate between schools and libraries.
Right.
The schools and libraries are the two institutions in our communities that belong to us. Well, and have not been treated as though they belong to us.
No, it's true. My father used to always say, you can get a free education with a library card. But most people don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, and we don't.
But, one of the things.
But it is complicated. In East Harlem, I thought we were able to have sort of a, since the whole area was one community, that people had choices within that district didn't seem to me to be destructive of the community of East Harlem.
Yeah.
Because within walking distance, there was 21 different buildings. And they literally were within walking distance of each other. I mean, from one end of Harlem, about 100th Street, to the other end, which was 124th Street or something like that. So within a mile by half a mile, you had a public community, which is geographically smaller than most upstate counties, schools. So there it seemed to me you could have both choice and maintain a democratic community.
Right.
But on the whole, the decentralization in the districts were too large, and they were not always capable of being communities, so that even then they didn't really represent communities.
And the choice system only works if there's lots of good choices.
Yeah. Well, And the other thing is also true is that so many other forms of democracy have become harder for people. There is fewer places that are these semi-public spaces.
Yeah.
Even, I don't know, even the things like Lions clubs and those stuff, do they still exist? Do young people join those things?
I don't think young people do. When you go to those links, it's all very older people, not young people.
And what about, I wonder whether even veterans organizations.
Right.
Do they?
I think they mostly represent people from World War II and Korea.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting.
No, it's true.
Those other forms of civic.
The whole civil society is just.
Yeah, is harder. So that schools really could be a very powerful place for that. But it's also true that we have, and this argument about what we mean by achievement should be taking place inside libraries and buildings and community people.
Absolutely.
About
and redefining
what do we mean by the achievement for our children.
But I want to say something. I just read something by Noam Chomsky, and he was writing about how he thought we were on the verge of fascism. And it made me think, I have a feeling that sometimes I like Noam Chomsky, but I think he's a little alarmist sometimes. But at the same time, I do think that he's right, that when people are faced with choices between democracy and disorder, or between democracy and security, they will choose security because people are afraid. And I think about it at the level of schools, for example. You see schools that have problems with safety. They'll say, we'll accept cops in here, we'll accept metal detectors, because we don't want to be in an unsafe. You'll see teachers that want it and kids.
Yeah.
because our vision that you could have safe schools, much less a safe society, without it becoming a police state is so limited. But that's a lot about fear, and fear drives
It's the same
people.
thing true about the democracy, which I think is, if we think the decision is very important, we become less and less democratic.
Yeah.
This was too important to let the teachers.
That's right.
This was too important to talk with the kids about it.
In
other words, the more we think in crisis terms, the more we find we don't scratch the surface and we don't believe in democracy, which is one reason that I disagreed with Shanker years ago about this word crisis about education. Because I thought, the things that get done under the name of crisis, and I was just rereading a little book of letters of Eugene V. Debs, who had just spent 3.5 years in penitentiary in Georgia for having spoken against World War I. And it reminded me that in some ways we're more shocked by that today than they were then.
Yeah.
So I have to keep that perspective in mind. On the other hand, it was done then under the name of crisis. We can't afford disagreement in a time of war. And all kinds of organizations, if there's a crisis facing them, think, well, we can't afford democracy. And the notion that democracy is something that that we have to give up. It's a luxury which we can afford only in good times. And every time we call fire.
It becomes another rationalization for taking rights away. But I have to say this. I served as an elected school board member in Berkeley, California. And that experience really left me questioning what we call democracy. Because although we were elected and we had, Berkeley people participate fully in the schools, it was very clear that it was not responsive of that community, that we were responsive to the most powerful and most affluent in that community, not to the families that were least well served. So even when you have a process that seems democratic, it can be easily distorted by power and by money.
Who has the time to
go to as many meetings. That's right. So
and feels comfortable speaking in public and so on. So that means that the only institution, though, that we do have for teaching kids about democracy is schools, and we don't use it to teach about democracy, and I don't mean just about it, to talk about it.
That's right.
But here is an opportunity to organize a building as examples of democracy on a variety of levels, not just of voting, but all the places. If you ask kids, where do people who disagree in that school, where do you think, what do you think they do about it? I think most kids have no idea, sometimes even though there is a place, and sometimes because there is no place. So we have 12 years of kids' lives which might lead them to think democracy is marvelous, wonderful, instead of which that it's just a dull lesson you get in civics class.
No, the number of kids, my son just turned 18, and I said, well, you get to vote this year. He said, really? I mean, the idea that was part of his rights now.
But they've not been part of any community, membership community.
That's true.
And in a weird way, even before democracy existed, there were membership communities. Not for everybody, but even for everybody. I mean,
even
political
with parties
a bunch of slaves
much differently.
That they belonged to a community of peers. And very few people belong to a membership community anymore, in which they're more or less equals within the community they create. Maybe gangs, I don't know. But,
except they're not very democratic either.
I mean, if you don't have community, democracy is a form of community. But if you don't have community, democracy is
just a bunch of individuals randomly connected.
And even the way we talk about the purpose of schools, it's individual. I want my kid to go to college.
That's right.
And not as though you have some public reason for having schools.
So since we spent a lot of time today talking about New York City, I have to say one more thing about it, because I deal with them a lot, the folks who run the system at Tweed. And I'm often, when I first moved back to New York, and I went and I started to engage the Department of Education, the first thing that struck me was how young they were. Many of the people running the system were former students of mine from Harvard. They were like deputy to the chancellor and deputy to this, and I was like, wow, you 26 years old and you're running New York City. But
Is that respectful?
It's not respectful, but here's the other side of it.
See, we used to have the idea as old socialists that the thing young people did is pick up the garbage.
Right. That's right. They have to work their way up.
They work their way up.
But here's the other side of it, because I work with lots of school districts around the country, and what I'm struck by is a lot of times the people who are running the system are not smart people. They're not technically competent people. They are, hacks of various sorts, and they're not able to do what needs to be done. And so even though I go to Tweed and I say, well, these folks, they don't know anything about the schools that they're leading, I will say this, they're at least smart.
I know,
a lot of times. And they're technically competent.
Well, in what way? They can send out those terrible things that principals get every month about all the things they have to do that month for the central board.
Right. What a trade-off, right?
But the fact of the matter is, here we're, the buses didn't work last year.
That's right.
I mean, if you're talking just about competence, and that we have the overcrowding in as many schools, that's exactly the kind of thing you would think these technically competent people should have been able to figure it out. And what's going on right now? I mean, if we don't have bus passes again next year, public transportation, they're going to have to totally reorganize.
Right. And we haven't heard Klein speak out on that as a civil rights issue.
Nice, right, but
educational right issue.
At the moment, he's given kids schools far from their home.
That's right.
That they can't afford to go to.
Right.
So what will happen? He hasn't said this is what would happen.
That's right.
He's provided no leadership. Either he hasn't thought about it. I mean, I can't imagine how the mayor of New York or the head of the school system, do they have a plan for what would happen if they don't give kids bus passes?
I have no idea. I mean, I think they're hoping that this won't happen. I think that, but I have no idea what they're really thinking, because...
Well, they certainly are not trying to mobilize the public.
No.
In behalf of it, and I really can't. I keep thinking it must be that they know that this isn't going to happen, but I feel foolish.
Right.
Because why aren't we all?
No, I mean, and there hasn't been enough outreach, but I think there will be.
I know, but we're almost at the end of the school year.
That's right.
And
it's
can't
almost
mobilize
about to
people over
kick in.
the summer. So what's going to happen in September?
Right.
When kids discover that they can't. It would cost them, $25 a week.
That's right.
For one kid to go to school.
Yeah, it's
if a family has
two
or three kids.
Yeah. Oh, forget it.
It is. So I think we need a strategy.
Yeah.
If we don't have a strategy for right now, what we're going to do in September.
That's right.
How we're going to organize. Should we tell everybody to go to your neighborhood school?
Right.
What do we do?
Right.
Tell people to do when they're faced with this.
Well, I think that speaks to the larger issue of organizing. Because if we're talking about democracies only work when people are informed, active, organized, collectively, not individually, but collectively, to make sure that institutions are responsive and are working for them. Yeah, and in the name of a fiscal crisis, we see rights.
It's like at the end of the day today, when I want to tell people some things that we ought to be doing, is there something around this issue we should be doing, and which organization might lead it?
I've worked with a group, the Coalition for Educational Justice. They organize parents. This is a group
So are they the group that should organize
well,
this?
they're probably better organized than anybody else I know in New York City.
So should we
I think we should probably work with them. Because
should we tell people here, call
they're
them?
organized in 5 boroughs. They organize with parents. They organize with young people as well.
So should people call them?
I think so. Because I don't know of any other group. The guy came to me this evening, said that he's with Parents for Public Schools.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get organized in New York, but they don't really exist yet as a presence. So.
And should they, or should they join?
I think we need lots of different kinds of organization.
Yeah. Not more, we shouldn't get them to merge.
Well, they should definitely work together, hopefully.
We certainly should work on this issue together, and somebody should have a series of plans. If we haven't heard by June 1st, there should be a mobilization on June 15th, and if we haven't heard by August 15th,
that's a really important point. Something I remember when I served students.
Face this
absolutely.
They each supposed to decide what to do.
Right.
The whole thing. How could they have decided on this complex choice system at the same moment in which they decided to get rid of free transportation?
Right.
And there isn't any place else in this state in which kids are expected to get themselves to school beyond a mile, within.
That's right. No, you have kids who are on train over an hour each way.
And even private schools.
That's right.
The public school system in New York provides busing for private schools.
That's right.
But they're not going to provide anything Are they getting rid of the busing for private schools? The issue is so astounding that once in a while I have these moments of thinking, something I don't understand.
Right.
Suppose they said from now on we have to all individually. There will be no cars allowed in New York City, or buses or taxis. Suppose they just announced that.
Everyone has to walk.
That's right. Everyone has to walk.
Or ride a bike.
Yeah. We would know that something has to change.
Right.
People at Wall Street would say, wait a minute. How's my secretary going to go? You could fly me in, maybe. But all kinds of issues like that.
Yeah.
Oh, Pedro, so that Juan Gonzalez is...
Juan we raised some really important points. But you see what's happening to him at the Daily News.
No.
He gets pushed back further and further into the paper.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He's like in the middle of the paper. I worry about his future as a journalist in New York City, especially given what's happened in newspapers.
And I thought Mike...
Mike was very good today.
Good.
Yeah. I was really encouraged by that.
And not in a demagogic way, if you know what I mean.
And he was not...
defensive?
Not defensive. That's what I thought. I thought even his take on charter schools was very nuanced and demonstrated, I think, an awareness of the complexities.
We have to keep these two groups from fighting. In fact, someone was supposed to come, but she won't be here. Just got an email that she wasn't be here, who was going to read a statement that parents who've been fighting each other between public and charter schools have issued a statement in, of what they've agreed, common principles about how we're not going to fight each other.
That's right. It makes no sense.
The same thing is true for teachers.
Right. That's right. In fact, I think the union's got to figure out a way to organize charter school teachers, because a lot of those charter school teachers are being exploited. They are working longer hours.
They have a lot of people who are assigned that task, but it's not easy to do.
Right. No, it's not. They don't let you exactly come on campus.
And also, their interests, they have cleverly done it so that they actually don't have the same immediate interests.
Yeah.
Charter schools have an interest in getting a higher per pupil allocation for them because it enables them to pay better wages. So I mean, even from the teacher's viewpoint, but the public school teachers fight them on that.
Right, but you see several of them have turnover every 2 years of teachers because of how they treat the teachers. So.
Yeah, but some of them also turn over because they didn't ever...
They didn't want them to stay.
Well, and they didn't, even the teachers wanted to do this as an experience.
Well, that's true.
So, a lot of people who went to the Peace Corps didn't intend to stay in Nigeria.
Right, that's right.